Lately I've been doing a lot of mosaic work. It's such a meditative process. You know, you're creating a picture out of tiny little pieces. It's funny because those pieces are kind of like pixels in a way. You know, you have the digital concept that's actually applied to an ancient art form. And I find that I can work on a mosaic for hours and hours and not even realize I'm doing it, because it's almost like putting together a puzzle. Usually when I approach a mosaic, I lay out all my colors around me and I begin to come up with a color scheme for what I'm going to do. So obviously that's driven by the image, although sometimes I'll exaggerate colors. But the thing about mosaics is that even though the images might look detailed, you're actually having to simplify. You have to distill it down to almost its essence before you can approach it, because the amount of detail you can get in a mosaic is not that great. The eye puts it together afterwards. You're actually trying to convey what the essence of the image is. I think illustration is a way of distilling an entire story within one image. I find that when you see a face where the history is written in the face, there's nothing more fascinating than that. Older people are a lot easier to draw because they have a lot of landmarks on their face. So there's something fascinating about it in this youth culture we live in, where it's all about young people. That's a big part of what I'm trying to convey in some of these portraits. I try to constantly mix it up as I go. I have a fear of single colors and single boring areas, swatches of image, so I try to avoid that as much as possible. Whenever I can bring a new color into it, I do. And it may seem chaotic at first, but by the time it's finished, it all visually works together. And I try to avoid just a pure black for dark areas, so I'll work in some purple in there, because there's no such thing as just pure black. Shadows are made up of all different colors. I could work on this one, say, for 5 days, until I get it really where I want it to be. Sometimes I'll stop at a certain point because I think I'm getting a little too obsessive with one detail, and I need to step back a little bit from the work to just make sure that the entire thing is working together as a whole. The difference between, you know, the commercial work I do and the work I do for myself, I think, is that when I get commissioned or I get hired by a client, it challenges me to come up with visual solutions for things that I might never have considered, because the client is pushing you to places where you don't normally go. You're doing a give and take with someone who may have, you know, a completely different perspective on what you're doing. I like to think of myself as an intuitive artist in a way, but also a subconscious artist. I think art is really an essential part of being human. I think a lot of people, when they grow up, they kind of lose that ability to be creative, and I think it's a mistake. And even though it's a solitary process, the creation of it, at the end, the payoff is I get to share that with the viewers. I think creativity is really an essential part of what makes us human and also what fulfills us as human beings. If I wasn't able to do art every day, I think I'd go mad.